Thank you so much for inviting me to this talk. I think Joanne has done quite a very good introduction for me. Currently, I work as assistant professor at University of Science in Malaysia. Feel free to connect with me. I run my own YouTube channel, although it's kind of like a random sort of YouTube channel with a part of my personal life with a bit of my sharing and stuff. I have a Twitter handle. I would much prefer to use a Twitter, and my Instagram handle is there as well, should you wish to follow. Okay, now moving straight to the point of the webinar. Okay, so AI is all the hype now. Everyone's talking about how ChatGPT could potentially one day replace some jobs. There are people who are worried that jobs could be lost. I work at the university, and I think the number one concern we have is, will students cheat with AI, right? In fact, it's a bit weird that we have this talk here about democratizing AI, when just few months ago, I think when OpenAI released ChatGPT, and when ChatGPT blew up all over the internet, that is essentially the biggest event of AI democratization, right? You get students, you have people who normally doesn't know about AI entering into ChatGPT and testing out the system. So yeah, artificial intelligence, what is it? All right. Now, to quote John McCarthy, one of the founding fathers of AI, he said, artificial intelligence is a science of making machines do things that would normally require intelligence if done by men. Now, if you think about it, this involves creating a complex system, all right, to simulate intelligence, or in certain sense, try to create a system that appears to be intelligent and solve problems that would normally require intelligence in men, right? So we have seen this, in fact, for the past few months, with ChatGPT, how it's able to actually come up with codes, come up with suggestions, with DALL-E, which basically takes in a text prompt and outputs an image, right? Something that would normally requires creativity, requires someone to get inspired before they can do that. Now, let us take a look at data. What's the current world like when we talk about AI? So according to this Acumen Research and Consulting, the generative AI market size is booming, all right? And it's projected to grow up to 110 billion by 2030. Now, to put that into perspective, let me take this chart and show it to you side by side to this chart for internet adoption, all right? From the start of the first website all the way to where we are right now, okay? So if you were to put this graph together, you can see that we are now sort of in that early stages. We see the same trend. We start to see a rapid increase in user, right? Oh, I can see Rebecca's putting her hands up. I'm sorry, Rebecca. If you want to ask some question, you can put it in the chat box. I think we'll address that later. All right. Okay, I see some guests waiting as well. Okay, now moving forward, let me show you what's more interesting here. All right. So in the beginning, right, you have a very slow adoption, right? So when internet was first introduced, you have that slow adoption rate as well. I first got to know about, I think, GPT as an algorithm, I think about 2 years ago, around the end or middle of 2021. So back then I was experimenting with some AI stuff, and then GPT came to me as kind of like a very comfortable sort of a very, very useful sort of text prediction algorithm, right? You can use it to complete text. So sometimes the output's not very it's not very useful, right? Because it's just predicting the text as it goes. But when GPT-3 was released, that was a game changer, right? Now, back then, we also have DALL-E version 1, and there's this other algorithm introduced in the early 2018 and 19. It's called the Generative Adversarial Network. So playing with GAN, I realized, yeah, you can kind of create images. You know, I was playing with it on Python, but the image wasn't very good, right? It looks nice. It's very gimmicky. You can show it to your friend and say, hey, AI can draw something, right? But it's not very nice. The aesthetics is a bit off. Now, that was in 18, 19, 21. And suddenly, in the end of 2022, we start to see DALL-E version 2, which is just mind-blowing, right? After DALL-E 2, we see stable diffusion. Suddenly, the user base just starts growing. So this is what you see down here as well, right? We're moving at the neck here. If I can put on a laser pointer, right? And with ChatGPT, or GPT 3.5, they call it, release, suddenly you see an exponential growth in users and an exponential growth in interest as well, for anything that is AI related. Okay, now that you're kind of like cool with what's happening in the world of AI now, all right, I'm going to talk a little bit more about democratizing technology, right, in general. So for that, I like to quote Dell here, right? So Dell, we call him the father of the maker movement. And what he said is, I made an effort to stay away from the word inventor, okay? Most people don't identify themselves that way. Maker, on the other hand, describes each and every one of us. No matter how we live our lives and what our goal might be, we are all makers. And that resonates with me because to say you are an inventor, it implies that you invented something. You probably patented the design, right? And then you would go to a patent office, you patent it, and hope that one day you can commercialize it and make money out of the royalty. But makers, on the other hand, we use technology to solve problems. We may come up with something new. We come up with something new, we share it with the community, right? We don't kind of like keep it for ourselves. So in some sense, I think all of us are makers. And when the digital maker movement came out, it is a huge democratization of electronics technology. There's this brand called Arduino. I think some of us who are electrical or electronics engineer might be familiar with, right? And there are 3D printing technologies that are open source for those who are doing mechanical. So in a way, technology becomes very, very accessible. In fact, this is not the first time this happens. Who here remembers how it's like to use a computer with command lines, right? Remember this, right? Back in the days, those were the only way you can access computer, right? And I remember when I was a kid running an emulator, I believe. Back then we were running, I think this was it SNES or something. We have to run it through command lines, and back then I was actually surprised, you know, to be able to do that just to access the games. So yeah, and eventually we have Windows, right? Windows or Mac with nice GUI, and that opens up technology to more people, to more audience. So think about it. If you're working with command line interface, for someone to do something on the computer, he or she needs to go through proper training. He needs to understand English at the very least, right? If the system is in English, and he or she will need to memorize a few commands, right? And those commands are not easy to remember. You have to kind of like make an effort to remember them. But with Windows, everything just makes sense. The start button is there, you clicked it, and there's a lot of apps that you can use. If you want to do something, you can always just download an app that does it for you, right? You don't have to worry about memory structures. You don't have to worry about the codes and whatnot. So in that sense, this technology, right, the operating system is democratized because it's open up for more people to use. Okay, and why is democratizing technology so important? Because it is a process that makes technology accessible and available to everyone, right? And this is especially important to make an equitable society where everyone has the opportunity to benefit from the advantages of technology. Now, if you think about it, this is the most important step to create an inclusive society, right? Think about if technology is only available to the elites, right? They can get all the information and whatnot, whereas the other group that doesn't have access to technology would never be able to compete against the elite group, right? So with technology democratized, we are actually opening up for equality. I really like this slide. I shared when I created this slide, it wasn't for this talk, it was for another talk about how STEM education is important for the sustainable development goals, especially when you talk about reducing poverty, getting quality education, and reduce inequalities, right? And one of the things that strike me to my heart really is the fact that technology can really change someone's life. So a bit about myself that, Joanne probably didn't mention, I actually come from Sarawak, which is one of the less developed regions within Malaysia. And when I was young, I was actually lucky to be one of the few with access to technology, and that really changed my life. Eventually got the opportunity to take on a PhD at University of Southampton, came back to Malaysia and started teaching at Southampton, Malaysia. So in a way, I would say having access to technology at a young age gave me an equal playing field with other kids who grew up in Kuala Lumpur, who grew up in Singapore, or growing up in the UK. So with access to technology, I was able to get a lot more resources that I would otherwise not be able to get, right? So yeah, democratization of technology for equality. And how do we do that then? Right. So here I have a 3-step sort of platform. You may agree with this, you may not agree with this, but the way I see it, this is the way to go. So the first circle here, we have application or AI-powered tools. So we have to empower the creation of such tools that uses AI, because there are a lot of people in the general public who doesn't know how to code, right? Who doesn't know about programming languages and the technology, and they may not be comfortable having to access these libraries and whatnot. So first, you create applications or AI-powered tools to help them, so they can download an app that has AI in it and that actually helps them with their day-to-day. The second step is actually to promote low-code or no-code platform. Now, this is for people who want to develop AI, but they are not too proficient yet with programming, especially students. Students in STEM, students in university, who may know a little bit of programming, but they're not too confident yet, right? So we have this low code and no code platform to allow them to access AI. And finally, we want to make AI education more accessible, right? We want to write documentations in user-friendly way. We want to write documentation to make it easier for a student, at least, when they read it, to be able to use that algorithm or use that model. So I'm not going to talk too much about the application side, because, as I say, ChatGPT blew up all over the internet. There's this war between Google and Bing. This talk is not about promoting ChatGPT, nor is it about discussing the ethical or sustainability of large language models. So I'm just going to leave this here, right, for you to see. These are the things that are available right now. You have filters that is powered by AI, right, to turn face into anime. You have gender swap, face swap filters. Those are usually for novelty, for fun. You have this app that accesses, the DALL-E in the background, right, to create art, AI art. Then you have, Bing, ChatGPT, which basically acts as a question and answer sort of chatbot, right? So I've actually tried Bing and ChatGPT. I think they are quite good, unnervingly good, right? So if you haven't, do try them out. But look at the next part here, low code and no code platforms. So this is where I want to show to the wider community, the sort of things that you can do with this sort of platform. Because in a lot of times when people talk about no code or low code, to programmers, they feel like, oh, okay, these are for students, these are for training, but actually there's a lot of things you can actually do with these things. So one of the best community I find so far is the Hugging Face, all right? And Hugging Face allows you to train, build, and actually deploy AI models on their servers as well. So I'm just gonna do a quick show here, all right? So this talk is about democratizing AI, so I'm just gonna show you a few of these samples. So on Hugging Face, right, if you go there, you can actually see there are models that are hosted. So a Pikachu fine dining with a view of Eiffel Tower. I could create art with this. A nice cottage next to the sea or something like that. Compute. So it will actually run this computation and load the model. All right. Once the model is loaded, you'll be able to see that it will generate a picture any moment now. So the nice thing about this is not only you're able to play with this model, you are also able to download them, all right? And you can also have access to data sets if you're doing AI research. But all in all, if you're a developer and you're just looking to kind of like build something open source, trying to get something that's not GPT, right? Not GPT-3 based. You want to create a chatbot using your own algorithm. You could go into Hugging Face. You can try and look for an algorithm that serves you, download it, all right, and remix the algorithm as well. Okay, so I can see that this is loading. I can show you the rest here. So if you go through the model, you'll be able to see all this model, okay? Feature extraction, image to image, segmentation, classification, all sorts, right? So you can just choose any one of them and it'll filter it for you. You can choose any of these models and you'll be able to play with this as well. So this is summarizing, right? So let's see if this, there we go, a nice cottage next to a sea. So again, it's not perfect, right? Because this is open source and you get a lot more contribution from the community. But I think the fun thing about working on these sort of models is that they are very open and you get a lot of funny sort of interaction with them. Okay, so that is Hugging Face. I leave the link here if you guys are interested to play around with it. And I think it's really a very, very big community of democratized AI technology, right? So it's not hidden behind a paywall. It's there for everyone to use. The next bit I'm going to show you is something I've used myself. It's by Microsoft, Azure Studio. Now, a side note here is that this particular version of Studio is going to be discontinued soon in 2024, but I still find it useful to show you because it gives you an idea of what a low-code platform looks like, all right? So this is kind of like an example experiment. You pass in the data set over here. So if you can visualize this data, flight delay data, all right? So these are all open source data that is available, okay? And this sort of drag and drop interface makes it really simple for someone who's new to AI, who is learning AI, to actually play, right? So you can actually set the data that you want. You can set the fraction, that you want to split. And if you want to run it, you can just click run. The nice thing about running this network is that it doesn't run on your computer. It runs on the cloud. And this allows you to build model and not worry about buying GPUs or to set up expensive hardware in your in your lab, right? So that's one. Moving on. So one of the other work that I very much like is this classifier by MIT App Inventor. So I included this MIT App Inventor in my other talk about actually democratizing technology to the mass, to the people, and to younger students as well. So nice thing about MIT App Inventor is you can use it to teach young children how to code, right? You can make really simple apps out of it, but at the same time, it's also versatile enough to teach older kids, right? Sometimes up to university level kids how to build an Android app very easily, right? Using their drag and drop interface. But one thing I really like about App Inventor, the current version of App Inventor is this, all right? So you can actually turn on AI. So if I were to switch off my camera here, you can kind of see my face here. I can turn on the camera here. Okay, so now I am actually on the screen here. You can create your own label. For example, I can create one with label Ivan, and I'll capture view of my face, and I could create another label here, and I'll just say phone. Okay. Now, if there are AI experts, among you guys, you may recognize this as what we call transfer learning, and it may not be very useful in a commercial sense, right? Yeah, but it works really well in teaching kids or in teaching, beginners about AI and about image classification. So for this, after you capture it, you can train it. It will train the AI model for you, again, on your browser itself, all right? So once the model is loaded and it's trained, what it'll do is actually generate a model file, all right? So you can see here it's training it. And once it's done training, okay, give it a bit more time. Done. Okay. So now it's done training. I can actually test it out. Okay, so you see here classification is Ivan. Capture that's phone. So it's a very, very useful tool to actually give this concept. So you kind of like gather a group of students, you tell them about AI, you give them the general concept of convolutional neural networks and things like that. You give them the theory stuff, but usually it's this kind of talk is boring unless they can see something, right? So with this sort of tool, you are able to kind of like create the model, and then they can actually export the model right here and export it to whatever MIT App Inventor app that they were creating, right? So they could actually create a little app, take a picture, and this app will perform some task based on what it sees, right? Based on the classifications. So it's just really cool, okay? And Google actually take this to the next level. So the next example I'm going to show here is again by Google. It's called the teachable machine, right? How to make a machine teachable. So again, this is a transfer learning based tool, right? So I'm just going to put it here. So nice thing about teachable machine is not only does it do image, it also does audio and pose as well. So with image, standard thing, same thing, you add a webcam, right? And same thing, you can kind of like take images, a bunch of images for training. You can rename the class as well. And you can rename this again, phone. Again, you can start the webcam. And you can train the model, okay? So it does image, it does voice, and it does pose as well. And the nice thing about this part is you get this live feedback. So this sort of thing, right? When you do it as a workshop or as an outreach activities, it really inspires people, because not only do they know the theory, they can actually see it working. So the main thing that kind of like drives people away from having fun with this sort of thing is the fact that if you want to set up an AI model, you would actually need to go and learn Python first, right? But with this sort of technology out there in the web, it becomes more accessible, right? So let me turn my camera back on over there. Okay, coming back to Teams. All right, let me just put this down. Okay. So what I'm going to do is turn all this, close all this, so that my picture can be shown on Teams again. Okay, anyway, the webcam is now taken over by by the AI code, but it's fine. Right, so moving on. All right, so in the first part, when I talk about low code or no code system, I talk a bit about education, right? So education itself, to me, is very, very important, because without proper education, people wouldn't know what AI is, and even if they know, they wouldn't know how to access it and how to make full use of it, how to gain superpowers from it, right? So to make AI more accessible, first we need accessible computing resources. And the second part is we need to have lots of documentation, samples, and support when needed. One of this example that I'm going to show you here is called the TensorFlow playground. So I'm just going to put this here. I really like this because this goes hand in hand with the whole education bit. So get people in, you talk about AI, you talk about the history of AI, and then you show them how AI works, you let them play with it, right? And they can see it in action. You can see that you can train the AI with different images. But here, with this tool, you can actually see how AI works behind the scenes, right? So you can actually see here, this is a neural network. You can add different layers of neural network. And when you click play here, it actually runs the training, and you can see the training live, right? So these are the features that I feed in. And these are the weights and neurons, and this is the output, right? So what I'm trying to do here is I have this set of data, orange and blue, and we're trying to train this neural network to classify them, right? So as you can see here, when I run it, you can actually see the whole learning process, right, going on here, and you can then use this to teach people, right, about AI. And the more they know, right, obviously, the more they can use. You can see here we have a more advanced pattern. As you can run this one, you see that it takes a lot longer to converge. So then you can explain, to the people what's going on here. Should we add more neurons? Probably. If I add more layers here, what's going to happen, right? If you run this, and what happens if you add more features here as well? And if you run this, what can you see, right? So I think this sort of exposure really helps, in opening up AI to the public, because if you talk about abstract values, right, without visualization, without pictures, without these, sometimes it may be very hard for someone who's not from the field of AI to actually understand AI. And I can say this in confidence because myself, I don't come from the AI background, right? I'm an electrical electronics engineer. And for my PhD, I actually spend more time in the nanofab, right? Actually in the fabrication, in the silicon fabrication part. So more towards hardware, not really on software. So when I try to get in on the wave, when AI started, when I tried to learn AI, I realized that there are a lot of tools there, but not a lot of people know it, right? So the other thing that I find very useful, obviously, I think if you are already doing AI, you would have access to this already. Google Colab. This is for those who are doing Python who are already comfortable with Python. So Colab actually has a whole set of tools, all right, made ready for people to use. Now, with all this said, right, you can see a pattern here when I talk about democratizing AI, right? And the pattern that we're seeing, let me just switch camera, see if I can get my camera working again. Nope, doesn't seem to work. Oh, that's fine. Just gonna proceed with whatever we have. Okay, I shouldn't have accessed the camera just now, right? Oh, okay, I saw it now. This is the issue. I should have turned this off. And boom, here I am back. Okay, forgot to turn that off, but it's fine. All right, the pattern that you're seeing is this, the rise of X as a service. Okay, now this is very important because I'm not sure among our audience, there might be some of you guys here who works for a company that provides one of these software platform or infrastructure as a service. Okay, so software as a service, for those who don't know, these are things like Google Docs and Office 365, where instead of selling you the license to the software and selling you a copy of the software, they are selling you a subscription of the software, right? So once you subscribe to the platform, you are able to use their software for a set of time, and then you have to renew your subscription. Then you have things that are platform as a service, PaaS, right? So for platform as a service, basically you have things like the SQL database, Google App Engine, and so on, Azure, all this available to you. You can use SQL database, but you have to pay the vendor every month or every year, right, to use it. So IaaS basically allows you to use the cloud, right? The cloud computing resource is the infrastructure as a service. So a lot of this PaaS and SaaS vendors, actually, they would be using the cloud, right? Using Azure or Google or Amazon cloud, right? In order to host their software. Then on the other side, I included this because I think it's interesting. It's a new term that I saw. It's drone as a service, right? So it democratizes the drone technology, right? It allows those companies that normally do not have access to drone and who did not want to invest into drone to actually get in. So why do I put XaaS here? Because I believe we are at the verge of AI as a service, right? So we have software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. Now we talk about AI as a service, it's a package, all of it, right? To kind of make this work, you need the software, you need the platform as well. You also need the infrastructure. And looking into recent news, I think the OpenAI and Microsoft partnership is a very, very good example of this, right? So OpenAI has the GPT-3 platform, and it's running its own software and it's using Microsoft's Azure as an infrastructure. And they combine together. I think Microsoft invested quite a lot of money into OpenAI as well. They come together to give this service, right? AI as a service in the form of ChatGPT and in the form of Bing AI, right? So Bing AI now has access to not just the language model of ChatGPT, it has access to real-time information from Bing Search, which is owned by Microsoft. So that sort of synergy we can see is what's going to power our future, I see. So why does this model work? Because X as a service provides reduced capital expenditure. Now imagine you're a startup, right? Like OpenAI, or if now you come off my seminar thinking, hey, I have this fantastic idea, I want to test this idea. You don't have to invest in servers. You don't have to invest in expensive computing equipment. All you need to do is pay someone, right? Get platform as a service. Pay someone to use cloud computing, host your application on maybe Google Cloud or Azure Cloud, Amazon, up to you, all right? And I can say I've been using a few of these cloud providers, and I can say most of them are experts in their field. And the support team usually can resolve your issues really quickly if you just give them a message. So this gives them an advantage over you setting up your own server, right? Because then if something goes wrong, you have to waste time looking into documentations and stuff like that. So what you do is you reduce your capex in return for a steady OpEx. And not only is it steady, but it is also scalable and allows anyone to get their ideas to life quickly. Again, give everyone the power, right? But obviously, weakness is your reliability is tied to your service provider. If your service provider is not reliable, obviously your software is going to go down, and your innovation is tied to your service provider as well. But taking all this away, right? XaaS is still a very nice model, right? Very convincing model for democratizing technology in general, not just AI. So I'm just going to do a quick summary here of what we've covered. So first, I talk about why we democratize technology and AI in specific, right? So AI is the next big thing, right? And if you democratize it, you promote equal access. So not only scientists in the lab have access to AI, but the general public should have access to AI as well. And when you do that, you will attain collective success. Now, obviously, there are a lot of ethical issues behind the scenes. Whenever you have a new technology, that for me, it's all about educating the public, right? It's like designing a gun. Gun is a piece of technology, but used in a good way, it's beneficial. If used by the wrong hands, it's dangerous, right? So the same thing is happening to AI right now. In the hands of someone with well-intention, good, it's going to bring progress. But in the hands of a student, for example, they could use ChatGPT to cheat, right? And it's going to be really hard to catch them. But if you use it responsibly, right? Again, I don't think there's much harm done. So all we need to do is to spend more time, looking into this and how we're going to regulate this. In terms of the stages, right? We have a few stages. In the first stage, you have awareness, how to use AI-powered application, be aware of the AI. Then you move to low-code, no-code platform. And finally, you have access to AI-based education. Okay. In terms of tools available to you right now, ChatGPT, which I didn't show here, is a large language model that you can use. You have a lot of hosted models like the ones I've shown you in Hugging Face. You have access to cloud computing. Sorry, I realized that I've been muted. Okay, can everyone hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Ivan. It was just a temporary mute.
Okay, that's good, because I suddenly see that it shows here Ivan you have been muted. But anyway, then I talk about X as a service as a very good business model, right, for democratizing any sort of technology in a sense. So I'm gonna end with this picture here. Where are you currently? All right. So for the audience here, do you think that you are AI aware? So AI aware is someone who knows about AI through the news or maybe through your friends, right? Or maybe you consider yourself as an AI user. You actively use ChatGPT, you use Bing AI, you use AI tools on the internet that's available to achieve your desired task. All right. Maybe you use some AI-based filter on Instagram, on Snapchat, or maybe use some AI tools in your production services, right? So if that's the case, you are an AI user. Or are you an AI maker, right? AI-powered maker. I'm not saying you make the AI, but you are a maker who is able to use pre-trained AI, right, for simple tasks. Now, or on the other hand, right, we have, I draw an imaginary line here. So this 1, 2, 3 is more to like the general public. And then for the engineers here, most of you would fall into this category, AI developer. You understand the core AI machine learning concepts, and you're able to code, you're able to create applications, and you're able to train your own, your own models. Or are you an AI innovator, right? Someone who is able to work on existing AI models and tweak the model, modify them for new use cases, right? Someone who can take a piece of AI, for example, one of the examples I saw is the use of this convolutional neural network for actually classifying voice. So they take voice data, they converted it into a spectrogram, and they use a pre-trained image model to actually classify the spectrogram, which I think is actually quite innovative in a sense. So are you someone who uses AI this way, right? Innovator. Or maybe there are some of you here in the talk who are AI experts, right? Someone who understands AI inside out. Probably you did like an AI related PhD. Someone who is challenging the state of the art, someone who is creating novel AI architectures that's not seen, in the market at all. Personally, I classify myself as 4. Okay, I've developed some core AI ML concepts. I'm able to code and able to create my own models. In fact, I want to show this interesting bit here. So I did this right after GPT was released. So I call it Ian. Okay, so what it does is it's a virtual IT assistant, basically. So I can ask something like, let me just zoom in here, if that helps. How to install Windows on Mac. Really hope that works. If it doesn't, okay. Right, it's unresponsive. Sorry about that. Let's exit the page. Sorry, it's actually a cute little model I hosted for myself, right? So just to show how democratized AI is right now, okay, with just a little piece of code, you can actually create this yourself. I have this hosted on my website. Feel free to take it and remix it if you want to. How to install. Yeah. So it's actually quite cute. Obviously not as good as ChatGPT, but yeah, it's there if anyone wants to play with it. So yeah, with that, I would like to end my talk today with about 10 more minutes for Q&A. So yep, thanks a lot everyone for actually paying attention here. Okay.
Thanks, Ivan. Thanks, Ivan.
Yeah.
Should we start with questions, because there's quite a few popping in.
Let me just
10 minutes.
go through with it.
Yeah.
Okay, for image generated by Hugging Face, are they images uploaded by someone or made by the website according to the input? So Candice, the image is actually made by the website, if that makes sense. So I just go back here. It's not uploaded by anyone. I can say Pikachu eating an apple, all right? So it's actually trained, the AI is actually trained based on a huge data set, and it's actually synthesizing this picture. In a sense, it's drawing this picture, if it makes more sense. Okay, although that's probably not how it works. It's a diffusion-based model, but in a way, you can imagine that it works that way. Bill is saying that no-code or low-code apps for generating business application have drawback because they generate and consume business data. There's the risk that the AI, no code or low code AI apps will suffer similar problems, drawing unsound conclusions. Bill, I think you're right. Actually, if you use low code or no code kind of like apps to actually drive a business centric application, it may not be sound, right? If that makes sense. However, for education, I think it is a very good starting point. So usually I would use this for research, for outreach activities to show people how the AI actually works. But if you want to use it for a business setting, for example, if you're using Azure for business, make sure you hire someone with proper data modeling background, ML background, so that when they can use the tool to speed up their process, but make sure they actually know what they're doing, right? Okay, Rebecca is asking if AI as a service, a digital mirroring of enclosure of the commons, where decision making sits with company boardroom. How would decision making and ownership look if it is truly distributed? So let me have a think. I would say the ownership actually depends on how this whole platform is generated. And obviously for the ChatGPT to Microsoft partnership, they do partnership by shares, by investment. So Microsoft actually invested into OpenAI. So obviously they own a bit of OpenAI as well. So this is sort of like, I think you're right? There are decision mates within the company boardrooms. Yeah. OpenAI tools on the web page, concerned about cybersecurity, data integrity, and sharing. Very good question, HN. So a lot of these tools actually, for me, I use them mainly for demonstration purposes, and I use them mainly for education purposes. I would not recommend you to use Hugging Face, right? To use it on sensitive data. Obviously, because first you are sending information into a website, and you might not know what's happening behind the scenes with the model. But one thing you could do, though, if you're concerned about cybersecurity, is actually go to models and actually download the model yourself, right? And host it within your own server. Yeah. So again, talking about OpenAI, there has been concerns of, people or employees who work for company using OpenAI's ChatGPT for their work purpose. And when they do this, eventually, if you look carefully into like the OpenAI, you see that they may use your interaction for training in order to improve their system. So I would caution enterprise users, please, if you are working on your company's PC, do not use these things. It's good for education use, good to play around with, or for personal use. Yeah. My thoughts on the IP of AI outputs. That's a tricky one, right? That's a tricky one. Personally, I think it's muddy waters over here, because there are some group who thinks the actual training data, right, should be taken into consideration, because if you train the AI model using someone else's work, then some sort of credit should be given. All right. But in my opinion, right, it's up to the user, right, to actually keep track. So in the case of, let's say, ChatGPT, if you are writing a piece of work, use a bit of ChatGPT to do some paraphrasing. For me, that's sort of okay. But if you ask ChatGPT to write an essay and then pass the essay off as your own, then it wouldn't be very ethical. Yeah. But again, this is my own opinion. It doesn't reflect on any organization, nor is it my organization's opinion. So, Candice, I think I'll leave that question just because it's a bit more sensitive. I suppose when someone
Ivan,
asks, yeah,
there are quite a lot of people are obviously putting questions in the chat box, but there are a few in the Q&A box as well. I don't know
I
if you want to
see.
just hop over and
Sorry, let
just
me just
answer a couple of those before we
that
run
as
out of
well.
time, if that's okay.
Okay, we have a bit more on the nuances involved on this concept. So AI as a service, basically it's sort of like paying to use the AI, right? So I think that's what OpenAI is actually investigating now. You can actually go for a premium version of ChatGPT, right? And they're probably thinking of different revenue models as well. So yeah, that is probably, hope that explains it. So personally, I use a bit of OpenAI as well. You buy tokens of them, and then you can build applications on top of their API, if that's what makes sense. So you pay per use, right? So it's sort of like a service. You use it, you pay. Images produced in Hugging Face, free to use. Yes. In most cases, a lot of these AI generated models, they are free to use. Although there has been complaint by artists, who state that their art or their art style, not the actual art, is being plagiarized by the AI. So the AI tries to draw in a similar style, but then it's very hard to justify that being your work because it's just a similar style. It's not something drawn by you. So yeah, but again, images produced by Hugging Face or image produced by DALL-E as well. I believe it's you have the right to use because it's generated from your prompt, right? Can AI be incorporated with IoT? Yes, absolutely. I think AI absolutely can be incorporated with IoT. In fact, in my house, basically I set up this Google Home system and I connected to the assistant and find it very useful to just, ask the AI to turn off the lights, turn on the aircon, or even, set it so that it turns on everything before I reach home. So yeah, absolutely. Cornish Christopher here, he said he missed the first webinar. Would it be possible to get access to recording? I think that question is meant for
Yeah,
Joanne.
I will.
Yeah.
I'll respond shortly. I think there's just one more question in the chat box, which is quite an interesting one, Ivan. If we could just get to that
Okay.
just before we finish, if that's okay.
Alexander. Okay. Asked GPT to write an essay. He then passed through plagiarism detector. And okay, can you comment on this? Any hope for the plagiarism detection long term? Alex, I must say, as an educator, I'm very scared because ChatGPT is here to stay, right? And students have access to this. It's free. We all know it. We have plagiarism checker, but then the students could definitely do that for it. Like what you say, right? Please rephrase that so that it will beat the plagiarism detector and it will be foiled. So my answer to that is we have to rethink how we do assessments. All right, perhaps essay-based questions. Students, they will use ChatGPT, but you have to tweak the assessment in such a way that they will need to do problem solving and they will need to understand the problem, come up with points, and they have to present the essay. That way, even if they can use ChatGPT to generate the essay, they will still have to solve the problem first. Yeah, so there's a bit of a problem solving element to it. So right, I think time is up. Exactly 11 p.m.
I think we need to draw to a close. It just remains for me to thank you, Ivan. Thank you for staying with us so late into your evening, and indeed to everyone who's joined us from around the world. It's been great to be online with everyone. We've had so many people joining us. I'll have a look through the chat and the Q&A boxes just to make sure we've not missed any questions. If we have, we'll do it via email afterwards. A couple of questions about CPD certificates. I will be dropping everyone an email over the next, probably early next week now, with a link to where you can download the CPD certificate from. I'll also include a link to the recording to this webinar. And someone else has asked about a link to the previous webinar that we did in January on demystifying AI. So I'll also drop everyone a link to that too. So I hope that's answered all your questions. as I say, thanks for joining us, and hope to see you on our next one. So keep looking on the website.
Right. See you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye now. Bye.